everybody.
Hello.
Welcome. Welcome to Landmark College's 2015-16 Academic Speaker Series. We're thrilled to be able to have this collaboration with Sandglass Theater and Puppets in the Green Mountains. In fact, we've done several of these events together, and I hope that we continue to build this relationship. Just so you know, by the way, my name is Jeff Burgess. I'm the coordinator of the speaker series here at Landmark. And so just to give you a heads up, our next speaker will be 4 people. It'll be a poetry troupe, a slam poetry troupe called Flatline Poetry. They'll be performing in the Green Hill Theater over in the Fine Arts Building on September 29th, 7 p.m. These are 4 young people, recent college graduates, who are actually making something of a living, writing poetry and doing oral language kind of presentations. So it's pretty exciting, and one of whom actually is a Landmark alum. So please, that's on September 29th, Flatline Poetry. Okay, so to get things started for tonight, we have a performance by Scott Ainsley.
Thanks so much. I wrote this song a year before I met Shura. It made us friends and colleagues. It's a song that is based on the loss of a migrant in the Tohono O'odham Reservation, which is the brown part of the map here closest to me with all that red in it. Her name was Gracia Cruz. She was lost in the Sonoran Desert on June 23rd in 2007. And all the facts in this song are facts from her story. This is her ballad. It's called The Land I Love. There's a YouTube video of this if you're interested in pursuing it as a song. The video that accompanies it has footage of this desert of Nogales and the cemetery where many of the migrants take refuge when they're deported, sleeping under the watchful eyes of the cartels. In the town I was born, it's full of cheap clothes from China and American corn. But we are the small farm that we water with tears. How can we compete? The gringo farms are so big, now we cannot stay here. And why would I leave the land that I love? Consuela, Rosalita, Mama y Papa. My grandfather's bones are up on the hill. If it weren't for low wages, I'd be living there still. So we pay the coyote. We rode in the van. We walked in the desert, lost in this land. The feet were so blistered that she could not go on. When I left her, I kissed her. When I came back, she was gone. And why would we leave the land that we love? Consuela, Rosalita, Mama y Papa. My grandfather's bones are up on the hill. If it weren't for no wages, I'd be living there still. Who says if you mark markets are free. Jesus was a poor man who suffered and died. A crown of thorns, spear in his side. He said, Father, forgive them. They don't know what they do. But I'm sorry, my friends, when we come to the end, how can we say that of you? And why did we leave the land that we love? Consuelo, Rosalita, Mama y Papa, my grandfather's bones are up on the hill. If it weren't for low wages, I'd be living there still. Who cares if your markets are free? Look what you've done to my wife and me. Who cares if your markets are free?
Thank you, Scott.
Sure, I'm just going to introduce you, okay? I'm Eric Bass. I'm the director of the Puppets International, Puppets in the Green Mountains International Festival, Walking to the Borders. This is our 9th edition of the festival. We are a festival dedicated to the relationship between art and issues. And the art is mostly puppetry, but not exclusively. And you've seen two really great pieces of art this evening, Scott's song and Marguerite Chouinard's woman, La Femme Blanche, the woman in white, out on the quad. So now it's time to move on to one of the issues that the festival has been talking in words and in performance about issues that are related to otherness, marginalization, dehumanization, specifically issues that have to do with race, with poverty, with immigration, in some cases international relationships, or relations, let's say. So it's with very, very great pleasure that I can introduce Shura Wallin, a friend of Scott and Barb, who brings to this festival something to make art about, an engagement with what's going on our side of the US-Mexican border and how it is affecting the lives of people. And I hope that by the end of this evening, more and more of us feel why this is an issue for all of us, even if we don't live on that border. So please welcome Shura Wallin.
Thank you very much for coming, and thank you for having me speak. How many of you have been to Arizona or to the desert, to the Sonoran Desert? Okay, quite a few of you. Were any of you out on the desert? Has anyone gone out on the desert, walking on the desert? Okay, so you have a sense, some of you have a sense of what that is like. And you probably in your minds, if you can imagine what it would be like to walk across that desert without food, without water, without knowing where you are, okay? All of the items on this table, with the exception of these drawings that have been done by children that I have met in Mexico, that I will show you and you can look at a little bit later. All of these items have been found on the desert. Now, I want you to think about this. Imagine that you have 15 minutes to leave your home and you can never go back. Doesn't matter what the reason is, you can't go back. You have a box this big, okay? Not very big. Not even maybe as big as this box. What are you going to take with you? What would you take? Anybody, just tell me, what would you take?
A monument item that brings back memories and stuff.
Okay,
Remembering, and something that is useful for me when I have to live a new life.
all right. How about you?
Picture of my family,
Picture of your family,
all my legal documents.
legal documents, okay? Do you have a lot of them? Okay, who else?
My dog.
Your dog, okay. Now,
The picture of my dog.
picture of your dog, okay. But if you were to bring your dog, that would mean what? You'd have to bring more food, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So,
My favorite stuffed animal.
your favorite stuffed animal, okay.
That sounds-
Something as a security,
Yeah.
right? Okay. Anybody else over here?
My family,
Your what?
my family,
Your family?
I love them.
You can't get your family in the box, though.
Oh, I know.
Okay. All
I know,
right.
but-
So, you're not necessarily going across the desert, you have to leave, okay? And you walk for a while and you get tired. And you sit down, you might be with somebody, you sit down, you put this box down beside you, and you're chatting with the person, and maybe you snooze off for a little bit, and you wake up and you say, well, I better go on, and so you get up and you leave. And you get down the road a piece, or the sidewalk or wherever, and you realize you've left the box there. And you can't go back, okay? And somebody comes along and opens that box and says, this is nothing but trash. It's nothing but trash. Is it trash to you? No. It's not trash to you, no. Would this be trash to someone? Most likely, if it's in a box, the box that you brought, it would not be trash. Well, I see these items here, and to me, they're a composite picture of someone's life. Someone who had to leave their country by virtue of the fact that they couldn't survive in their country, by virtue of the fact that there is so much violence that they have to leave, they have to get their children out. And those are a couple of the reasons that people are migrating. And I just want to show you some of these items, and please, if you have questions, please jump in, okay? This purse, not very big, is it? This purse was found. And in this purse were these high heels, okay? This little suit, the pants are here. All of these pictures, which are clearly, some of them may be family pictures, some may be pictures of friends, but clearly pictures that meant a lot to the person who was carrying this purse. Okay? The comb, the eyelash curler. Well, think about this. Think, as I'm talking, what kind of a person do you think this woman was? Tweezers, a straight edge razor, makeup, a compact, a little, if she had had a chain, it would have been a little charm to go around her neck. It's a little boy and a little girl. A little plastic doll that would be used on a birthday cake in Mexico, okay? She was fortunate. She was more fortunate than a lot of people who come across the desert. She had a toothbrush that had a holder, okay? And she had a little bit of toothpaste. As opposed to these toothbrushes, which were found, we've found literally thousands of toothbrushes. Now imagine you have a toothbrush without a case. You don't have a lot of water to waste at all. You brush your teeth, you drop the toothbrush, and it's in the sand. And you pick the toothbrush up. How are you going to use it again? You have nothing to wash it off with. And how awful that would be. And we all know what it's like to get up in the morning and feel that kind of crud in our mouths. We want to wash, right? What would you do? What on earth would you do? Now the next question, and a question for all of you, what do you think happened that prompted this woman to leave this purse behind with all of these things? Tell me what you think might have happened. Yes? She died? Well, I didn't find her body. We didn't find her body. She may have died, but she didn't die close to where we found the purse. Okay? Anybody else? Yes?
She got very scared and suddenly felt like she had to run.
Okay, that's a very good point. Yes?
That looks very heavy. I would not want to keep carrying that for a long ways.
Okay, it's not, well, you're right about that. It actually isn't that heavy, but that is a very good point, because heavy to me, I'm standing here, I don't have very far to go, this would not be heavy to me, but if you're plodding across the desert, this might weigh you down at some point. Yes?
Besides the pictures of what appear to be family and friends, they don't seem to have as many practical uses in this scenario where you're fleeing for some reason.
Right, okay. Now, before we go on about why she may have left this, what kind of person do you think she was?
She probably had good hygiene.
She probably had good hygiene, okay?
She wanted to look good in the desert.
She wanted to look good. Anybody else?
Maybe he was prepared to get a job in the new land he would go to.
Exactly. And she wanted to look presentable. And she had a great deal of confidence maybe in herself, and always, making herself look beautiful, because if she looked beautiful, she might have a better chance at getting a job. Okay. So going back to why this purse was left. Anybody else have an idea? Yes?
Someone stole it.
Someone could have stolen it, yes, that's true, although there was a tiny little bit of money in here, so they missed the money if they stole it, okay? A couple of more, yes?
She might have had to carry her children and not be able to carry her bag too.
Okay, all right. So, yes?
Somebody might have got her basically for like a cartel or something that could have taken her, and maybe she had to leave something there and she just couldn't take anything.
Maybe she was kidnapped.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a possibility. Okay, here's another scenario. And I think more likely than not, this might have been the scenario, because there wasn't, if there had been a cartel person or someone connected, there would have been a struggle, probably. Yeah. And not always, but probably a struggle, and it didn't appear to be that way. However, she probably was traveling with a group, with a coyote, okay? And the coyote leads people to where they're going to be picked up, all right? And you cannot take anything with you getting into a vehicle that does not fit in your pocket. And the reason for that is, anybody? The more things you have, the fewer people they can get in the vehicles. So the coyote, you might be walking on the desert and the coyote gets to the pickup point, the layup spot it's called, And he said, okay, we're gonna rest here for a little bit because the ride's coming and so on and so forth. The ride comes and the guy says, get up, get going. You can't bring anything. So, thus, all of the things found in the desert. And that happens repeatedly. And it is not uncommon. About a year ago on I-19 going towards Phoenix, it was very hot. There was a U-Haul parked on the side of the road, and there was a person staggering by the U-Haul. Someone called the authorities. They opened up the U-Haul, full of migrants. I think 5 had died during that, because there's no air and there's absolutely no consideration for their lives, because the coyote already has the money. And it's all about money. Okay? And they'll tell you that you'll say when they're taking a group across the border, they'll tell people it's 5 miles to Tucson, when in fact, at best, it's a 7-day walk, at best. Now, not unlike everybody else, you want to believe the best thing here. You don't want to think to yourself, oh my God, I have to walk 7 miles in this? I can't do that, but I could walk, I could walk 5 hours and get there. So it's all this tremendous game that is played out in the lives of the people that are being taken by the cartels or coming across the border on their own, okay? So after we're through here, you can come down and look at all of these things. Now I want to show you some other things. This is deodorant, and I happened to find this on the desert. It had almost no dust on it, which told me that the person who dropped it had been there shortly before I got there. And I always call out, don't be afraid. This is what we do. Don't be afraid. We're here to help you. We have food and water and medical supplies. And we call out in Spanish, okay? So I looked and looked and looked and called out and said, don't be afraid, so on and so forth. Well, the person obviously was very frightened, or and he probably was okay, or he would have come out asking for help, okay? And this was found not that far from where I live. Here's foot powder, okay? Nivea, you all know what Nivea is. It's like a salve, a cream that you put on your body. Here's arnica. Arnica is for sprains, and it has kind of a sort of a Vicks smell to it. And I had a Guatemalan, young Guatemalan woman at my house, and she was looking at all of these things. She was with a group, and she was looking at all of these things, and she took this and she opened it up and smelled it, and she started to cry. And I found out she was crying because she missed her home so much, and she didn't know when she'd be able to go back. So imagine just a smell, what that can trigger for people. And think about how fortunate we are in this room, that we don't have to face these kinds of things. And hopefully we never will have to. We have a lot of rattlesnakes on the desert, and there's a story about a group of migrants that had been picked up by a Border Patrol agent in the desert, and the agent got bitten by a rattlesnake, and the migrants carried him out. So he didn't die. And this is an antidote to scorpions, the bark scorpion in particular. The bark scorpion is the most dangerous scorpion in the world. I have personally been bitten by one in the finger, and my health is good, so I didn't succumb to this. But in 1942, in Arizona, more people died of scorpion bites than rattlesnake bites. So someone someone knew that this creature was on the desert and brought something in hopes of being able to save his or her life or the lives of other people with this, were they to be bitten. Okay. These are religious items, articles, that with crosses on them that were also found in this purse. This is a diary written by a woman to her loved one. And we found this, and actually I have always felt that the person had been in the spot where we found this not long before we got there, because there's no moisture, no evidence of moisture having smeared the ink, nothing on the outside. It was a little bit dirty, but it's heartbreaking to see these things, I find, anyway. Baby items. This little glove, I found this glove very close to a drug drop. And there was nothing else with it other than to indicate that the child was with an adult or anything, but the glove was there. And just picked it up, and it was probably for what, maybe a 2-year-old, maybe a 3-year-old at most. A baby bottle, the powder, formula. Now imagine how difficult it would be just by yourself to get across that desert. Imagine what it would be like bringing a child. I met a young girl at the Comedor where I work in Mexico with migrants who have been returned. And the young girl was with her mother. She was 15. She had a 14-month-old baby, and her mother could not have been much over 30 years of age. And they were going to cross, and it was hot. They were going to cross. And I said, you can't do this. You cannot do this. The first person to die is going to be your baby. You can't take enough food and water. No matter what you think, you can't. And the tragedy of this is that they felt they needed to leave their home, which they undoubtedly did not want to do. They're leaving everything behind, everything they know. But they're not able to survive. Either because they don't have, they can't work enough to make enough money. They could have been threatened by the cartels, any number of things. But at first when I was talking to them, they thought this was kind of a lark. You know, they kind of smiled. And the longer I talked and the sterner I became, the more they realized I wasn't kidding about this. Problem is, they can't go back, as I was saying. There's nothing for them in Nogales. There's no work for them in Nogales. And they can't cross, they can't get work in the United States. They can't get across the border. So what are they going to do? In a way, that's a rhetorical question, but it's really not. Think about what you would do. What are you faced with? And this is what most people in this country do not understand these things. They don't know what is pushing people to come. They think people are coming to take their jobs. They're not. They're not taking the jobs that we as Americans are going to do. They're not taking computer jobs. They're taking agricultural jobs. We don't want to do those. We just don't. That's too much work. But in the final analysis with this girl and her mother and baby, they decided not to cross. They just said, they finally got kind of sober around all of this and said, we're not crossing. I don't know what they did, but all I could hope for was that they really stuck with that. Because, and I say, I don't want to come out and find your body. I have done that. 3 of my friends and I found a deceased individual. And initially, we thought he had been dead maybe 2 days. But in retrospect, I think it was probably 2 to 3 hours. The fluids were leaving his body. He was on his back, and in supplication, there was a bit of blood around his mouth. He was 64 years old. His name was Oscar Salas Biagran. And he, not Oscar, that's his son, Alfonso Salas Biagran. This is a picture that you can see. This is a picture of the memorial site. And the tragedy of this was, in part, that he was an eighth of a mile from a road. And I got in touch with his son, who was a cab driver in LA, and I asked him about his dad, and I said, do you know whether your dad came with a group? Because when we found your dad, I mean, there was no foul play at all. We did not touch the body and ran into a Border Patrol agent who called the Sheriff's Department. But there was no sense of foul play at all. There was no water near his body, there was no food. But he was in supplication again with his head back. And his son said that he had worked for 18 years in Atlanta doing construction work. And he felt that he was too old to continue. And so he decided to go home. And home was close to Mexico City. And when he got there, he realized there was no possibility of being able to work. In other words, no possibility of supporting his family. And so he decided to come back. And his son, if I can read this without my glasses here, his son wrote this note after I spoke with him. I think I better get my glasses and I'll keep talking. Anybody have any questions? Yes?
Just how did you become so passionate about this? How did you get into this field in the first place? When you can answer that.
Okay, I'll come back to that, I promise you.
All right, thank you.
You think I'm passionate about it?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
These are readers?
Oh, I don't have my
Where's your jacket?
jackets, must be in the car, is it? I think it
These are
is.
225s.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah.
Oh, I think I can make do. I'll try. Thank you, Mary. I'll try. Okay. Today, I am more resigned to the death of my father, which is very difficult to understand. It has been 12 years since I have seen him. How I wish I was able to embrace him as tight as I could. I miss him so much. Now, thanks to God and the group of Samaritans, my father will return home. Thank you. I appreciate all that you did for my father, and for all the great work you do day after day. I will pray to God for all of you, and I hope someday to be able to show my appreciation in person to all and each one of you. God bless you, Oscar Salas. And Oscar again lives in Los Angeles. And I said to him, if ever there is a time that you can come to Arizona, I will take you to where your father was found. And he was found an eighth of a mile off a road. And he'd come the way he thought he should come. And it was a profoundly sad day for us. It's very hard, as you can well imagine, would be a really awful thing to be involved in. But and I was happy that actually that he had identification so that the family could be notified, and the wife and the family decided that it would be okay to have him, what am I thinking of? Cremated, because it's too expensive to send the body back, but they did send his ashes back. So, another thing, here's a little, how old do you think this child might have been?
1 and 2.
What do you think?
1.5, 2.
1.5 or 2, yeah. And this little shoe. Okay. This is an example of what happens to shoes. I've brought part of the desert with me, so I don't want to ruin the rug here. This is an example of what the desert does to things. It just dries and things deteriorate, including human beings, of course. I've probably found hundreds of shoes out there, and I'll tell you another story. I was on a search. We do searches. We take, our cars are marked. We take backpacks of food, water, medical supplies, and we go into the desert. We walk on the desert calling out in Spanish, "Don't be afraid, we're here to help you," and so on and so forth. And one day we were coming up this road from a camp, and looking down, there were two Humane Borders water tanks. Humane Borders is a group that started in 2000 that puts recycled Coca-Cola tanks on the desert with a blue flag of, just like this, of the Big Dipper, okay? And a 30-foot pole, and this is the blue flag, all right? And wherever, I mean, this is actually one of the flags. Wherever the tank is, they have gotten permission to put the tank there. Okay. So we were coming up this road and looked down into this arroyo, and it seemed that there were at least two people down there, and they hollered for help. So we went down, and there were three. There was a husband and wife. The wife had collapsed, and she absolutely could not get up. There was no possibility of her getting up. And she was a bit heavy-set. She had lost one shoe walking across the desert. Her husband had taken off his shoes, given her his shoes, and put on her one shoe. So he walked barefooted, half barefooted, across that desert. The other person who was with them didn't really know them. He spoke English, he had been in this country for a while, and he said to me, "I didn't want to leave them alone." And he actually gave up his own freedom, or his own being able to go back to, maybe back to his family here, because he didn't want to leave them. Well, we called the fire department. They didn't have a board to put this woman on. So eventually what happened was she was medevaced out by the Border Patrol, and they took her up to the fire station. We went up to the fire station. She's on the helicopter, and her husband and the other fellow are handcuffed. And I said to the agent, I went over to him and I said, "Would it be all right if I take this woman's husband over to her so that he can tell her goodbye, and vice versa? Because we have no idea when or if they will ever see one another again." And he said, "You go ahead and do that." So I was grateful to him for doing that. And again, I have no idea whatsoever what happened to them. You know, just don't know. Questions? Yes.
I'm just wondering, do most of your stories, when you find people, does it end with you calling the Border Patrol?
No.
How do your stories typically end if you find people?
Well, I mean, actually, the truth is, if we, I'm kind of
want to know, like, what is
Yes.
the sort of overall mission and...
Okay, if someone is ill, if they can't walk, we do not, I mean, I'll tell you truthfully, it has to be an extreme situation for us to call the Border Patrol. It is also against the law for us to transport. I am of this opinion, and I stand by this, and I think many of the Samaritans do too. There are two laws. There's man-made law, and there's moral law. For me, moral law takes the high ground every single time. I have no argument with myself at all. It's just the way it is. Case in point.
You understand that you're legally obligated to call Border Patrol if you see someone crossing into the United States, right?
I'm not legally obligated to do
In
that.
some states you are.
In Arizona, you're not.
Yeah, Arizona you're not, but like California, I believe you are.
Mhm.
So you wouldn't call?
I would not.
So you would be willing to go to prison
I
to
would.
save someone's
Mhm.
life?
Yes, because
Even though they don't actually belong here?
because if I call and word gets out that people can't trust Samaritans, do you know how many?
They shouldn't be there in the first place. They should, if they want to come here, they should come here the proper way.
Okay, we'll get to that, okay? Okay, wait, let's not have a riot. Okay, all right.
But what if you can't come the legal way? What if you try every single way that you can and you
Thank
just
you.
can't? You
Yeah.
just can't.
Thank you.
So what's the legal way? Yeah.
You go through an immigration system.
But what if you can't?
Let me ask you this. Do you have any idea how long it takes for a person to go?
Yes, I know, it takes a very long time.
How many years?
It takes about 8 years.
No, let's keep going. Let's keep going.
It takes about 8 years to properly get through.
No, it does not. It takes roughly 20 years. Roughly 20 years to do it. Okay, yes.
Actually, I've known someone who went through the whole process, and it actually takes a lot of time. There is not just one specific amount. You have to go through the whole process.
Yeah. It's not.
There's green cards, and then you have to wait a few years after that to get your citizenship. You can't just automatically get your citizenship.
No, that's right. Or your green card. I mean, that's just, no.
That's just one part. You have to get a visa.
Exactly.
And there's this whole process.
Yeah. Yes.
President, most of us, our ancestors came from somewhere else and had to do the same.
All of us, most of, almost everyone in this room probably, yeah, they all came from Europe. They came the proper way.
Okay, let's stop. Wait a minute. Wait just a second. Yes.
Okay, well, part of my family had to come through out of the Holocaust to this country. They couldn't wait. It's do or die. You can't wait.
You wait mine. You come over, you don't wait, or you come over, then you wait, because you go through Ellis Island, which most of them did.
No, okay, let's come back to Mexico here, just a second. Yes. Okay, wait, please listen so that we can hear.
Just one more thing, I agree with, having morals and all that about people that actually need help, but at the same time, it's a slap in the face to the people that came in the right way.
Exactly. Thank you.
I agree and disagree at the same time, because, it's a slap in the face to the people that came in the right way and went through it the right way.
What do you mean the right way?
Filling out paperwork, coming in legally, that sort of.
Let her speak. We're not talking about Ellis Island here. I understand what you're saying. Okay, we're talking about Central Americans and Mexicans coming into this country.
I get that.
Okay? All right. Now, if you have money and you have the proper clothing, and you come here and you have a business, let's say, you're gonna go to the front of the line. If you are a peasant from Honduras, from Chiapas, from Guatemala, from El Salvador, you don't have a ghost of a show. And so the question is, are you going to stay? What would you do? I'm asking you, what would you do if you were in Honduras, the most dangerous place in the world now? You what?
I've been there, and I know.
What would you do if you were being threatened by the cartels, by the gangs. You see your children being carted off by them. And you have other children, and you know that if you don't do something, you're going to lose your whole family.
We go on a hike.
You go on a hike? All right, I think we don't have that thing. Anyway, yes?
I was gonna say, I had a girlfriend who had her family murdered in Syria, and she went through the proper channels to get here. So that's like asylum.
That's asylum. Okay, all right. Yes?
Oh, I was just gonna say, since you don't have a job and no clothes and no nothing, even though they are violent in your home, they can follow you to the thing and they.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yes.
so you can't
Yes, you're
go
right.
in the right way, you have to just do it
Right.
the secret way.
Right. Eric?
Yeah, sure. I think for some of us in the room, and certainly it was true for me, until recently, the idea of what someone is leaving when they are forced to leave any of the Central American countries that Shura mentioned, that idea is an abstraction, right? We think, oh, someone doesn't have enough money, they can't get a job, they leave. We were just working on a project in El Salvador, and it happened that we were down there during Fiesta. In the first 2 days of Fiesta, 50 people were killed. Okay? We went to a museum, an anthropological museum, and the first exhibit we walked into was a museum about Salvadoran migration. And the first panel giving reasons for the migration was people couldn't stay in their homes anymore because gangs had taken them over. So we have to try and get inside what is for us an abstraction because our lives are not like that. And then we come to the situation that Shura is talking about. But I think it's very important to first understand that the reasons that people are trying to leave, whether it's 8 years or 20 years, it's moot when the reason that you need to leave is death standing at your door, standing in your town, and it's now. And that's sometimes the situation, perhaps often the situation
Yes.
that we're talking about.
Yes.
Yeah, but I don't want to bring death to standing at my door. I'm just curious, the deaths that show on that map, are those referring to what? I can't read it from here. On the map up here?
These are, yes, these the red dots on this map are where, this is just a portion of it. These are all deaths that we know of. All migrant deaths here. The brown area by the hand, that's the Tona Autumn Reservation. And we as Samaritans are not allowed on the reservation. The reservation is sacrosanct except for the Border Patrol. Okay, the Border Patrol has free reign and they run over whatever they see. They run down the cacti when they stop Native Americans. My understanding is when they stop Native Americans to ask for their identification, they all carry an identification card. And sometimes they'll look at the card and they'll throw it in the sand. I mean, it's for what reason? For what reason? But we cannot go, it's either 100 yards or 100 feet to the reservation. I have 2 Native American friends who put water tanks out on the reservation because you can see how many people, I mean, we have no idea how many, I mean, it's thousands of people. And these are the clusters. They put water tanks out on the reservation in strategic areas. And as soon as they put the water tanks out, the tribal council sends people to take the water tanks down, okay? And in part, I think because there are a lot of drugs that are coming across, the cartels will come up on the other side of the reservation and they get people, obviously, to carry the drugs for them. That's one reason. But my friends they decided not to do the water tanks anymore. So they put water out on the ground in the form of a cross, gallons of water in the form of the cross. And they said to the tribal council, if you destroy the water, you are defiling the cross. Case closed. And I'm sure it still happens, but I think in some ways they have been able to make a little bit of a headway in there. But when you think of the number of people dying just in that area, and those are only the bodies that have been found. Only the bodies that have been found. Yes?
I was say something. It doesn't show Texas, but like if there was a map that was Americans killed by illegal immigrants for Texas, in 2012 it would be double that. Texas government says there was 3,000 people killed in a homicide.
I have a hard time with that. Yes. Okay, yes.
Okay, so I have two things. First, I respect what you're doing, but your morals are against the law. So you're putting that border patrol people in danger by doing that. So they're crossing.
How do you think we're putting the Border Patrol in danger?
If they're crossing illegally, many border patrol people have died because of illegal.
You think so?
Yeah.
How many do you think?
I don't remember, but how many people have died from that? Why can't they just do it legally?
We just went through that.
Yes, but why? If they want to come to the U.S. so badly, why can't they just wait?
Tell me what you would do. I'm asking you this question. Tell me what you.
Because I'll be honest. I came here legally from another country.
Where are you from?
Ukraine.
You're Ukraine.
Yes.
That's a totally different issue than what we are seeing on the Mexican border. What would you do? What would you do if you were watching your children die before your eyes?
But I wouldn't put my kids in danger trying to cross into the U.S.
So would you rather have your children?
I tried to live as safe as I could in Mexico.
But you can't. That's what people don't understand. You cannot do that.
Okay.
Isn't the biggest issue that we're really talking about here how to fight the cartels in Mexico and how to bring down the corruption in those kind of countries?
In part.
That's the reason people are fleeing these countries.
In
because
part.
of the corruption and because they can't feel safe there.
Right.
There shouldn't be a need for them to flee into America to have asylum.
No, there shouldn't be. I mean, under other circumstances, I agree with
Why
you.
is it an American issue? Like, why is that? Why is it our responsibility to house these people? Isn't it more a responsibility to help the countries in fighting their corruption and getting rid of the cartels?
Okay, let me ask you, who's using the drugs? Okay, yes. We are the biggest consumer of drugs, okay?
I just want to say that every time that you buy drugs, every time that you go to a street club, every time that you buy some clothes that you know are made by a company that exploit people, it's your responsibility. The biggest economies in the world that also has this huge amount of money to help poor countries is, I mean, they're exploiting these countries. And the cartels are so big in Mexico because you just love the drugs, I mean, you know. So
More on drugs, not because of the drugs themselves.
exactly. I mean, the drugs are there, are all over the world. It's your decision to take it or not, to use it or not. No? And the decision when you buy, even, I mean, I'm not angry, right? I'm Mexican. I'm working legally here. I came here invited to a puppet festival. That makes me some kind of VIP in this classroom, you know. And it's just it's very amazing to see how much ignorance I mean, we're in a college, right?
Yeah, I agree.
Yes.
It blows my mind.
I mean,
Yeah.
what I'm saying is that you don't know nothing about what's going on outside your world. And, sorry, it's very funny. It's very funny. I mean, I'm a 44 years old man. I've been traveled. I live in Mexico City. The neighborhood next to mine, which is a middle-class neighborhood, really nice neighborhood, is one of the most dangerous in the world. Just across the street. I know drug dealers. It's just funny. I mean, it's funny to see how racism and prejudice is so hard in this country and in other countries. Why? Ignorance. And because, okay, I love to use drugs, I love to wear some shoes, but I don't know where it came from. I don't know what's going on with this. And really, if you think that people is willing to risk their life to leave their families, it's only because they want to live the American dream, they just want to survive. That's my point of view from somebody who lives on the other side of the border, which is North America also. So, you know, you're okay.
The vast majority of people that I have met, whom I have met, and there have been thousands, the vast majority do not want to leave their countries. They don't want to leave their countries. They don't want to leave their children behind. They would prefer to stay on their land with their families, but they can't. It is an impossibility for most of them who are trying to come, because they know that they are basically dead meat on the hoof if they do. They have to do something. And there was a woman, I'll get to you in just one second, there was a woman who was picked up on the border, on the desert, several years ago with 2 children. And the Border Patrol agent just took her up one side and down the other. Look what you're doing to your kids. You are endangering them, and this is terrible, and this. And she said, look, I can stay in my country, and I can watch my children die before my eyes because I can't feed them. Or I can come here and try and get a job and feed my children and educate them. That's all I want to do, is to have a safe place. Not unlike what any of us would do if we were in that situation. I can't think that there's anyone in this room that wouldn't do the same thing. Yes?
I just wanted to say that going through the channels from Central America and Mexico is very different from going from a European country.
Thank you.
Because the U.S. government regulates the amount of people who come from different regions. And so if tons and tons of people want to come in from one to the U.S. from one region, most of those people aren't getting through because they are regulating the amount of people who can come into the country from that area.
You're right. Now, also, I want to say one thing, that racism plays a huge part in this. Case in point, our State Department issues warnings to us about going to the border, about going into Mexico. Don't go, it is dangerous, yada, yada, yada. And yet, we have no compunctions about deporting women, babies, young children, young kids that are ripe for the picking with the cartels and others in the middle of the night to Nogales. Midnight, 1, 2, 3, 4 in the morning, 5 in the morning. They've had their cell phones taken from them. They can't contact their families. They have very little to eat. They don't know where they're going to sleep. And there they are in Nogales with the cartels. Across the street from where I work, up on the hill, are the sicarios, the assassins who are there working for the cartels. They're there with binoculars, watching the comings and goings, and picking off whoever they think is vulnerable, somebody who's alone, okay? So that's the reality of this. I mean, as horrible as it is, yes, you in the blue, I'm sorry.
I feel like we're missing an important piece, which is the international human rights of seeking asylum. If you're facing death or threat of death, and you cross into another country, you may seek asylum. And that's what the majority of these people have come here to do. It is a legal process in international law.
Yes, it is, and a lot of people do seek asylum. You're very right about that, and for those very issues that they are being threatened, and they know if they stay, they're sunk. Eric,
One of the complexities of the asylum issue is that it pertains specifically to a country, to if you are in danger from the government of that country. Whereas if you are in danger from the entire violent culture of a country, it's not technically asylum. And that's been the problem of these 50,000 Central American kids who came in or tried to come in or are being detained on the border since, what, it's more than a year, I can't remember. Because our court system is divided in such a way that if people come into America fleeing their government, there is a court process in this country to take care of them. But if they come in and it's not the government, but just other people in the country who happen to be gangs and cartels and so forth and so on, you don't qualify. So it makes things very hard to process.
yes, yes.
Yeah, I was just thinking about what occurred in this room, the kind of emotional response that was shared, and from students that are, maybe around the age of 20, and how this dynamic is playing out nationally.
Yes, you're right.
And that we have a hard time listening to each other and staying in that space of discomfort with each other long enough to actually educate each other about the issue. And I think again about how, not to bring this up, and I feel like I've brought this up several times, but I live in a city that's dealing with a lot of conflict. I live in the city of Baltimore, and one of the things that I've seen be very effective is when there's education about the historic structural things that have led to the situation. Because I think that's come out of the discussion. You're talking about what the actual asylum laws are that keep people from being able to apply. Some people were talking about how there are quotas. It was a really great piece of information. Someone talked about the drug war and the policies and our consumption, and I think sometimes that framing it first with that information can be helpful, because I really appreciate you appealing to our emotions, because I think it's very important, but we don't have the actual migrants here to tell their story, and so I feel like it's very easy when we're being appealed to emotionally to respond emotionally. And I feel like that's the place that we're at in American society. To talk to you, Alejandro, about what's going on is like we end up just engaging in these emotional moments. People that don't agree walk out, or they close their ears, and we're left with a room full of people that is invested in the issue and cares, and then it stays within. And I feel like, given the issues that we're facing, how do we find our way to engaging in a sustained dialogue with people that, from an emotional basis, or their identity, right? A lot of this is tied to our identity and how we feel. How do we cut through that? And I feel like one of the ways is by through concrete information that makes us really aware from the get-go about how we're implicated. That we as Americans created, and you talked about that at the beginning, you talked about You know, or the song, the gentleman who played the song, you talk about the corn, like how our agricultural policies and our international development policies have made it impossible for people to survive. So then it creates a kind of understanding that we are implicated deeply. The United States is deeply implicated in creating the situation that is forcing people to flee. Not that, because like, again, living in Baltimore, people look at certain parts of the city and they're like, people are just violent, they're just, you know, they don't want to work. Right. They're just, you know, selling drugs because it's easy. When you then have a presentation about how the policies in the city of Baltimore have criminalized blackness and have incarcerated people for minor offenses and have made it difficult for people to economically move themselves forward because they were buying their enslaved family members out of slavery and had no capital to build their own base. Suddenly people are like, oh, now I understand. And so I guess all I'm saying is that as part, you know, there was an emotional moment here, but I think maybe one of the lessons is sharing those really you're very deeply involved, and I have so much respect for the work that you do, but I feel like so many people don't know enough about what has created the situation, so they need that information to be able to then understand the emotional, kind of the humanitarian appeal that you're making.
We can speak about Monsanto, if you'd. I'll speak to the issue of Monsanto and what happened after NAFTA came into being in 1994, January 1st, 1994. I'll come to that in just one second. Yes.
We as people make assumptions on. We judge people, and I don't see what the reason for judgment is. We judge people on race, sexuality, gender identity, how they are. But you really gotta focus on what's inside them. Don't. We make, assumptions on the race.
Yes.
We assume things that are bad because of things we've heard. I don't understand the fact that we just automatically think. We have to learn for ourselves and can't think. We have to learn for ourselves and develop our own opinions. We can't go off social we can't go off social status. We have to have our own opinion. It's really like, why do we agree with people? Because of their social life? We have to think for ourselves. Don't let anyone tell you different is what I've been thinking. You can't let someone brainwash you or hurt you in some kind of way.
Okay.
I don't understand the fact that we judge so much.
Thank you. When Monsanto was enacted into law, January 1st, 1994, 3 minutes after midnight was the first Zapatista uprising from Guatemala, from Chiapas, not from Chiapas, because the people of Chiapas knew, they mostly are Mayan people. They have subsisted for centuries on their corn crop. And they knew that with NAFTA, they were sunk because we began exporting corn. And then came Monsanto, who went to the people of Chiapas with seeds. Now, the Mayan people have grown corn for centuries. They know what to do with the seed from year to year. Okay, they would take care of it so that they had seed to plant the following year. Monsanto went to the people of Chiapas and said, do we have a deal for you? We've got this corn, these seeds. If you plant these seeds, you're going to have a crop of corn unlike anything that you've ever seen. And the people fell for it, hook, line, and sinker. What they didn't tell them was that it was genetically modified, which meant that it was a 1-year crop. At the end of the year, and they had a yield, it was true what they said. It's a huge yield of corn. At the end of the year, They went back to get their seed, and the seed had rotted. So Monsanto said, well, here, what we'll do is we'll buy your land from you, and we'll basically make you indentured servants. And that, in essence, is what started this particular wave of immigration and migration. The people could not survive. They had nothing to survive on. So if any of us in this room were in that situation, we would probably do exactly what the people have done, which is to migrate someplace else. And so where are they going to head? They're not going to get ahead anyplace else in Mexico. There's not a chance in the world that that would happen. So that started the wave. That's one of our government policies. And that's exactly what you're talking about, you know? Yes.
I just had a couple of kind of backdrop questions. And I know you work in a narrow area along the border. One is, I'll throw three at you, but they're pretty short answers.
Okay.
One is, where is the wall?
Where is the wall? The wall is right, see where it says Nogales? Sasabe, Nogales, Naco, Douglas, all along there is where the wall is. And up into this area over in here, right about there.
Already finished or under construction?
No, it's already finished. I mean, it's as finished as I know it's going to be finished in that area. It started out at 12 feet, and then they added an additional 15 feet. And the interesting thing is that there's a film of two American young women climbing the wall, and they're timed. Take a guess at how long it took them to get up over that wall. No, one was 15 seconds. I'm not kidding. And the other was 17 seconds, just up and over. And what happens with the cartels, when they're getting people to climb the wall, they oftentimes will tie a rope around the added part. And so when people get up there, they can lower themselves onto the ground, onto the other side.
And then the second question is about what percentage of people try to cross and get to the place of safety in these vehicles, and which completely on foot from when they set. Any idea?
No, I really don't have a clue with that. I mean, there are attempts to get people across the border in vehicles, for sure. But by and large, because of the way the Border Patrol is set up now, unless they are in a very, very, very remote area, but even then, the Border Patrol is all along the wall. I mean, it's just, they're just there. It's very hard. Usually, the vehicles come in when people have already gotten over the wall. Not always, but usually. More likely than not, when what I read in the paper is that they've picked up a load of drugs, and usually it's not people that they've caught going through the checkpoint. It's usually drugs.
And the third question has more to do with the group that you're with, because I think at one point you said you consult or counsel people in Mexico?
Yes.
Well, so on either side of the border?
Yes, no, in Mexico, I ask people, the people that come to the Comedor where I work, or where we work, I will ask them if they're going to cross, and if they say yes, I tell them, absolutely, this is extremely dangerous, there's no food, you might have a little bit of food. Hopefully, if you're going to do this, you will find a water bottle that we've left. But there's basically nothing, and there are very bad people on the desert, and that's all there is to it. That you have cartel members that are preying on people, and I try for the most part to convince them that it's better for them not to go. But then they say, "But what am I going to do? I can't stay in, there's nothing for me in Nogales. What am I going to do? I have to do something for my family." So it's a terrible, it's an absolutely horrendous dilemma. It just is. And I can't see that it's getting any better. Yes.
I'm just hoping that people that are not from Landmark don't leave with this mentality that this is the Landmark student. I think there should be an awareness. I'm from Arizona, and coming to New England, very different. It's very different diversity-wise, and I think if you think of the perspective of where that student is from, they're young, maybe idealistic, and what have they been exposed to and what haven't they been exposed to? Growing up in diversity everywhere in Arizona, that's a huge part of who I am. I can't just assume that this person shouldn't feel this way because they haven't been exposed to the things I have been. So I hope that you think that way when you leave here instead of being hurt or mad, which I can understand about these students who are here just as we are, to be aware of this,
Yeah, but I think that I know that being young and being a student doesn't mean that you have to know everything, but it's also responsibility of parents.
Yep.
It's also responsibility. I mean, it's also the responsibility of your government. It's also the responsibility of the media. It's an excuse. You're living in a world that now is more connected than in any other era. I mean, there is information at the reach of your hand. I mean, it's in your phone. So I'm not saying that you have to know everything, but because when when Shura started talking, I was just listening to all the comments that this young man were saying, and I don't know. That is why I say it was funny, because I thought that I was listening to a very old man in 1950s. And that kind of thinking comes from every house.
Yes, it does.
I understand where you're coming from. My family, Arizona, biracial, my family's well educated. Looking at me, people will have assumptions, and I completely understand where you're coming from. And coming here to New England and all the different cultures, people that are wealthy, people that have no exposure with anybody from another ethnicity, it's very new. And for my own personal benefit, I was raised with the belief that you can educate people, but you can't force them.
No,
and I completely understand your
right.
frustration,
No,
but
of
that's
course.
not all students. And it's to push the, what is it called? What's the phrase? To push the envelope is part of being a student, for them to
Of course.
do that.
But luckily, I don't think that the majority is like this, because I've been traveling inside this country for about 20 years. I know, but mostly in college, it's not like this. I know. So don't worry about it. And I have not, because I got a little bit angry, not because of them, because of this old thinking that it's really crazy. I mean, you can feel it. You can really feel it. So that was why I'm saying this.
Good.
I think a lot of people feel that anger too, and one of the beautiful things we can do with that anger instead of showing the anger is education. And
Exactly.
rather than the frustration, is give love through education. And that's all we can do, because we can't force people to change their minds. So that's all I
That's
hope
right.
we come with that mentality versus this is just Landmark students and speaks for everybody.
Yes.
The disappointing thing in listening to the conversation here that left is the number of facts that they had that I think the rest of us who are left here totally disagree with.
I would agree with that, and I agree that it's their prerogative to think that, but there's a saying from Haiti that I love, and I would like to round the people up who left and say, come with me and look into the faces of these people, listen to their stories, and then tell me, then say. But the saying is, what the eye doesn't see doesn't move the heart. And I can tell you from taking someone to the Comedor, where I work, someone who is very, very to the right. I mean, we're talking as far right as you could possibly go without falling in the river. And on the way back, she made this statement. She said, "My friends and I have always thought that they were coming to this country for flat screen TVs and for all of the, what I call knickknacks that we have." She said, "I had no idea the desperation." And that hit the nail right square on the head. Right square on the head. Yes?
When we were having this conversation, I'm actually offended in the sense that, not really in South America per se, but I had family in Holocaust who has escaped, and I've heard their stories, and like, that, I was crying too, like, because I've heard one of my family members was 4 years old, and he had to leave because his family got all killed, right in front, he's in the camps.
Yes.
And like, to hear that, like, you don't know how it feels like, like, that's, my God, like.
Yes, I understand fully. I have children draw pictures for me, and unfortunately, I have the original pictures at home, and I really didn't want to bring them because I was afraid I would lose them. So I copied them. They're in black and white. But this one, except for this one, which I have a second copy of, with these colors. This is from a little boy, 5 years of age. And here's the Border Patrol vehicle. He told me that this was from his home. The pink was the tree, and this looks like a baby buggy. And this gray part is the detention center. And here are the Border Patrol vehicles, and here's one of the family members that he put in the truck. Now, the reason I'm showing you this and these pictures is that there's a book called "I Never Saw Another Butterfly," which is poems and drawings from children who were at Theresienstadt, and eventually went to Auschwitz. 15,000 children, of which 100 survived. They either died in Terezin or in the camps. The drawings in that book are no different than the drawings that I have from the children at the Commodore. Not a shred of difference. And if you care to look at these in the next few minutes, you're more than welcome to do so. And I'm sorry that they're not in color, but these are going to be put into an ebook, I believe. And when I look at these and I compare them to the drawings, it is so devastating to me. I can't begin to tell you what it does to me, and how horrible I think the policies are that we have, and how wicked things are. And it's up to us, it's up to each one of us to try and straighten it out, if we can, as best we can. And I think I have to close now. But if any of you want to come down here and look, you're more than welcome to. There's a backpack that I found 5 minutes from my house with this pair of underwear, which I think was probably for a maybe 9 or 10-year-old little boy. And these things, the toilet paper, and this little bag, which had cracker crumbs along the bottom, about that far. 5 minutes from where I live. And I have to be honest with you, I was devastated to find this. So, thank you so much.